I'm Joyce Parker, the emergency manager for the city of Allen Park. I was appointed by the governor to this position in October of 2012, primarily because of the city's situation from a financial standpoint, where there's a deficit outstanding of approximately $4 million. In order to address the deficit, part of what has taken place is actually putting together a financial and operating plan for the city. And as part of that financial and operating plan, there's a number of initiatives that are being considered to either enhance revenue or reduce expenses in order to balance the city's budget and ultimately to eliminate the deficit. One of the items included in the financial and operating plan to address the deficit is an amendment to the charter to increase the millage related to police and fire operation. In doing so, that would be one area to enhance revenue that would allow the city to again balance its budget and eliminate the deficit. And so what we would like to do is to discuss with you various questions, frequently asked questions related to the ballot proposal, which will be on the August 6th ballot for an election here in Allen Park. And so what we would like to do is discuss various questions that have come up related to the ballot proposal.
Ms. Parker, what are you asking from the citizens of Allen Park in this millage?
I'm asking the citizens here in Allen Park to consider amending the charter to increase the amount and extend the term related to a police fire millage for police and fire operations. Basically to increase the amount from 3.5 mills, which is what is currently in the charter, to 6 3/4 mills, and to extend the term from 5 years to 10 years.
And if this millage is passed, the previous public safety millage will then come off the books that was passed in 2011?
Yes, what would take place is that the current millage at the 3.5 mills would be amended to include the new amount, which would be 6 3/4 mills. And so basically we would be amending the amount from 3.5 mills to 6 3/4 mills, which is an additional 3 1/4 mil.
And what can the residents on an average price home expect to pay per year on this current millage if it passes?
On average, for a property that's valued at $80,000, that property owner should expect to pay about 74 cents per day, which is about the amount that, well, actually less than what you would pay for a cup of coffee or for a soft drink.
And if the millage passes, when will this be put on the tax rolls? What time period?
The additional amount would be placed on the tax roll with the December tax bill that normally comes out about December 31st of 2013.
So that would be due, that I think that due date is February
28th, I believe.
February 28th.
Yeah, so a resident would have about 2 to 3 months to make 2 months to make the payment once receiving the tax bill.
You know, there's a lot of questions in the community about the length of this millage being 10 years. Could you explain why this has been made for 10 years?
Well, you know, the one thing I'd like to share first and foremost is that the original millage was for a 5-year period. And certainly the city appreciates the support from the community because the amount was definitely necessary. But the 5 years was not long enough. And so as we start discussing eliminating the city's deficit, part of what the city is required to do through the state of Michigan is submit a deficit elimination plan. In that deficit elimination plan, there has to be a time frame of at least 5 years to demonstrate that the revenue will be in place. And then there's a need for additional years in order to sustain the changes, to determine that things are back on track. And so that's the reason why the 10 years is being proposed as opposed to a 5-year time frame.
I know you have mentioned in some of your talks about the millage that if the city at some point in the future doesn't need the full amount of the millage, that some of that can be rolled back depending on what our financial situation is. Can you explain how that would work? It's kind of a confusing matter in a way, the rollback. A lot of people are saying, no, it's never going to be rolled back.
And that is correct. I've said that in several of the meetings here in Allen Park. Primarily, what we would do is evaluate the need for the millage on an annual basis as we put together our budget. And as a practice, generally the city will be required to have some type of reserve in place. And the standard reserve generally is about 10%. Once the city is able to meet that 10% reserve requirement under this process, we would then roll back the millage based on any additional revenue available. And so that would take place on an annual basis. We'll review it on an annual basis and make the changes as necessary. And I know a lot of people say, well, who's going to roll back a millage? No one ever does that. Well, as the emergency manager in another community, that approach was taken, and the residents there was able to benefit from that rollback.
And when you talk about when we talk about a 6 3/4 mils increase, we should also probably, I don't know if you have statistics for this, how much the taxes have decreased for the average resident.
Well, actually over the last 5 years, the taxable values in Allen Park have reduced by 28%. And so as we talk about the city having financial difficulty, a big part of why the city is having financial difficulty is because the city no longer collects the same amount of taxes as have taken place in the past. And what we're really asking the residents to do, of that 28%, give back to the city 5% in order to handle the operations of the police and fire departments. And so the additional amount of the millage really equates to 5% of that 28%.
Okay, and then we're looking at the possibility that this millage doesn't pass. What happens to staffing levels if this 10-year 6 3/4% millage doesn't pass?
If the 6 3/4 mils does not pass, the residents here in this community will see additional reductions from what has taken place already. So, for example, we've talked about reform here with how the city operates. We are making those changes, changing our health care. We are looking at changes to our pension plans for employees. The city has already taken reductions with staffing levels to a level where right now the city is very lean. In addition to all of those other changes, what residents will see is major reductions. For example, in the fire department, we're at 22 firefighters. We're going to be reducing that number to 15 In the police department, we will see an additional 6 police officer positions be eliminated. City Hall will be closed at least one day a week as a furlough day, and as a result, City Hall will not be accessible to residents here in this community. The intent, if we are able to get the millage, is to reopen City Hall 5 days a week. You will also see an additional reduction in terms of wages for the ASME employees as well as the non-union employees. And the city will begin to use part-time positions in lieu of full-time positions in order to balance the budget. And then one other area that will be considered is a special assessment for street lighting here in Allen Park.
And when you talk about furlough days, you know, people know that, most people know that the City Hall is closed to the public on Friday. But what you're saying is a furlough day, at least one day a week, there will be nobody in City Hall.
That's correct. Basically, as it stands right now, City Hall is closed to the public on Friday in order to allow the employees to catch up on the work, because the city is staffed very low at this point in time. Under a furlough day, City Hall will be closed entirely, which would mean the employees would actually see another 20% reduction in their wages.
And when you talk about Plan B, if the millage doesn't pass, you know, and a lot of people would characterize Plan B as a scare tactic. A lot of the residents in past millages would say these things that might be instituted because the millage doesn't pass are just scare tactics to scare people into voting for the millage. When would Plan B, the reduction in fire and police, when would that go into place if the millage doesn't pass on August 6th?
Well, actually, Plan B, just to clarify, Plan B is not a scare tactic, and it's not because the city doesn't have the revenue to operate. So, given the fact that the revenue is not there, if the funding is not available through the millage, then the only other way the city will be able to operate is to reduce its expenses even further. And as stated earlier, the plan has been submitted to the state. I will be required to implement Plan B right after the millage vote. So within 10 days, you will see things start changing with City Hall.
And probably with the reduction in staff, are we looking at reduced response times when it comes to something like that?
I would expect that the residents here in the community would see some change in response time, primarily because we're going to be so limited in terms of the staffing for the city.
Could you summarize basically the points that are most important for the residents?
Well, I think the points that are most important to the residents is that the city is requesting an increase in the number of mills as well as the number of years for the millage for police and fire operations. The reason why the increase is being requested is because the city is in a deficit situation, and that deficit is more than $4 million. In order to close the deficit, there's a need to look at a number of options to either generate additional revenue or reduce expenses related to the city's operation. So one of the options that is being considered is this millage. The election is scheduled for August 6th. In the event that the millage should pass, it will help close that gap in terms of the deficit related to the city's general operating fund. And we then will have a better opportunity to get the city back on track. If the millage does not pass under Plan B, residents here in this community will see major reductions in staffing levels with the city's operation. And with those reductions, limited service delivery to the extent that we will have less staff available to address staffing levels necessary. And so what we're asking residents to do is to come out and vote and consider the amendment as requested in order to assist the city with operational expenses.
And so once again, the actual cost to a resident of an average, say, $80,000 home, we're looking at, you had mentioned 74 cents a day.
74 cents a day, which is less than a cup of coffee that you might purchase on a daily basis, or even a soft drink. And so we're just asking residents here to have confidence in the city and provide the resources necessary in order to maintain services at existing levels. I'd like to take this opportunity again to thank Allen Park residents for their support, even in advance of this election issue coming up. Given the time that I've been in Allen Park, I've had a great deal of support in the community and a lot of good ideas on what should take place as we talk about restructuring the organization and trying to balance the city's budget. I also would like to again extend an invitation to any resident that might have a question to feel free to make contact with me at City Hall, and I will make time to sit down with you, discuss this issue related to the city's finances or any issues related to service delivery. And thank you again.
Welcome to the Allen Park City Clerk's office. My name's Michael Mizzi. I'm the Allen Park City Clerk. Question number one, how do I register to vote? Very simple. Stop in here at the Allen Park City Clerk's office Monday through Thursday, and the whole process will take less than 5 minutes. Or you could go to any Secretary of State branch office throughout the whole state of Michigan and register there. You can also go online and obtain a mail-in voter registration application by going to michigan.gov/vote. Again, that's michigan.gov/vote. What are the requirements for being a registered voter? Very simple. You are a U.S. citizen, you're 18 years of age on or before Election Day, and that you're a resident of the state of Michigan. I'd like to remind you the last day to register to vote for the special election is July 8th, 2013. You must be registered on or before this date to be eligible to vote in the August 6, 2013 special election. Who is eligible for an absentee ballot? The state of Michigan has certain criteria, and the reasons are as follows. That you are 60 years of age or older, that you expect to be absent from the community in which you are registered for the entire time the polls are open on Election Day. You are physically unable to attend the polls without the assistance of another. You cannot attend the polls because of the tenets of your religion. Or that you are in jail or awaiting trial. How do I obtain an absentee ballot? It's simple. Once you have completed your application, you return it to the Allen Park City Clerk's office, and we will either mail you your ballot, or if you bring your application in, we will hand you the ballot, although you cannot obtain a ballot for any other voter than yourself. Ballots are due back no later than 8 p.m. on Election Day. Where do I go vote on Election Day, Tuesday, August 6, 2013? There will be only one polling location. All 16 precincts will be located again here at Allen Park City Hall. Thank you for your time, and please remember to vote on August 6, 2013. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to call the Allen Park City Clerk's office at 313-928-1144. And again, remember to vote on August 6, 2013. Your vote matters.